Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. This is where accounting professionals just like you learn all the ways to grow their firm, sharpen their skills, and have consistent increasing sales. I cover topics such as detaching from the emotional side of the sale, having paradigm shifts in the most important part of your business, which is the nucleus of your accounting firm, sales, and how to see an objection really as an asset and stop giving away your time for free for those that don't deserve it, so you can actually get paid your value and your worth and grow your top line revenue. You'll learn tips, sales strategies, as well as hear from personal interviews from successful accounting professionals. This podcast will show you exactly the blueprint on how to create the firm and life of your dreams full of abundance. Welcome to the Abundant Accountant Podcast. It is great to be here with you. We have a very special guest. She is recognized as one of the top 50 women in accounting. She is also known for leading the charge when it comes to advocacy, change, and community in the industry. She is a CPA tech entrepreneur and leader of the Accounting Professionals program over at FreshBooks. And she is working to empower accounting pros with the tools they need to thrive, as well as helping them discover their most valuable asset, which is their authentic self. So we're actually going to talk a little bit about that today. But before we welcome our guest to the show, I want to make sure that for those of you that are really just kind of struggling, we're already like Q1 2021 right now. You're frustrated still, you're stressed, you've got all these referrals and clients coming to you because of the COVID mess. But you really want to take control over who you're working with, but you just don't believe you know how to, or what you've been doing isn't working anymore, then head on over to theabundantcall.com to schedule your coaching session with myself or my colleague. To be honest, that's not really all your fault. There really is nobody training you on really how to fix those problems and connect the dots. So we will explore together what is possible for your firm, so you can actually create the dream practice you want, work a lot less, spend more time with your kids, or maybe even just like kicking your feet up and watching Netflix. So head on over to theabundantcall.com to schedule your session with myself or my colleague. And the only request I have is that you've been in business at least 2 years. So you've had your own accounting firm for at least 2 years. And now let's welcome our special guest to today's show, Twyla. Welcome to the show, Twyla.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks for having me here.
Yes, thank you so much for taking out the time to, share all of your greatness with other CPAs, accountants, enrolled agents, tax planners, resolution experts, etc. And I think before we dive into today's show, which we're going to be talking about, what are the benefits of being progressive instead of reactive as an accounting professional and as having a business? Because I think so many times from what I hear, it's like we're always behind the 8 ball with our clients. But how do we get ahead? And why are we going to get ahead and have the thinking and rechange and reshape the thinking as an accountant? But before we start, Twyla, can you just give a little brief overview of your background and what you do now? Because it is pretty impressive background if you don't know who she is.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to start there. And really, I do have a more of an interesting background than probably anything. I am a CPA. I'm a designated accountant. I live in Canada and became a CPA early in my career, but I'm definitely a non-traditional accountant. Truthfully, I never became an accountant to be an accountant. I actually really decided to take up accounting because I wasn't entirely sure what I wanted to do, but I felt like, firstly, accounting would never be amiss. It would never be amiss to just understand finances. And at that time, I always thought it would be my plan B, that the world would always need accountants, that I should never find myself out of a job. And
funny.
I knew that now that the industry has changed and potentially that's kind of sometimes the threat that we hear is that technology is taking over traditional accounting. But at the time, that was not in my line of vision. And I thought, this is job security at the very least. But I knew I wanted to be some sort of entrepreneur. I grew up in an entrepreneurial home. My parents were business owners. I was an entrepreneur at heart. And so I knew that just doing accounting would kind of wrap into my career somehow. Once I got my designation, I got my first role as a financial controller inside of a manufacturing company. But then I found my career taking a very meandering path. And because I wasn't set on exactly what I wanted my career to look like or where it was going to go, I was very open to what's next and letting it evolve and shape the way it was meant to. And so I found myself firstly, after being a controller, I found myself then owning my own business for a period of time, even doing recruiting for accountants for a period of time, and then got back into more of a traditional type of accounting space, which was owning and operating a advisory, accounting, bookkeeping, tax firm with a business partner of mine. And so that kind of brought me almost like full circle back to accounting space again and really into the accounting industry now. And inside of our firm, we then started to work with small business clients we were using more technology, found a pain point of our own, and decided to develop a cash flow forecasting tool, which was going to be a tool that we could use with our clients as accounting professionals and then ideally market to other accounting professionals to use with their clients. And in that exercise of building a cash flow forecasting tool and starting to get really connected with the accounting industry, that's when I got a taste of giving back to the industry and contributing to the industry and using my entrepreneurial experience and my accounting experience and even sometimes my recruiting experience. And there's a component of sales that comes with recruiting. Yeah. All of that combined, that I recognize that I have something to give back and I have something that others can benefit from. And I really became passionate about that contribution to the industry and been able to take everything I know and here it is. I'm open to sharing it. Take what works for you. And if that is even one golden nugget that contributes to your success, then I feel fulfilled. And so that kind of then evolved into getting connected with FreshBooks, which is where I'm at now. And that opportunity presented itself and really just kind of went hand in hand with what I was getting a flavor of and what I was really enjoying, which was connecting with the industry. And with FreshBooks being a global platform and a global company, then I felt like this was the opportunity to extend my reach, but still contribute to the industry and ideally contribute to the success of other accounting professionals.
Awesome. Well, I'm very excited to have you here. And I think today we're going to focus on kind of like the technology is taking over. I think that's a big fear and a big thing that a lot of the listeners deal with on a daily basis. What do I do with these just 1040 clients? Everything's going to be automated in the next couple of years. And how do you become that progressive accountant, that one who's thinking 10 steps ahead, maybe a year or two into the future, and not looking at past history, but looking at even the business clients into the future, saying, hey, here's what you have coming up. What could we do to make your financial situation even better? So how did you kind of reshape your thinking as it relates to seeing the progressive side, then being more on the reactive side, even when you had your own firm?
I'm fortunate in that when we stepped into our firm, my experience really was kind of entrepreneurial operational accounting. I didn't have a traditional tax background when I took my designation. I took my designation inside of industry, which meant operational accounting is what came second nature to me, or what I really knew best. Truly, if I'm admitting it, I don't enjoy taxes whatsoever. And that was a component of accounting that almost turned me off from even becoming an accountant, because I'm like, I just don't want this. I don't enjoy it. I don't want to read the tax act. Like it just, nothing about it appealed to me, versus getting inside of kind of the inner workings of the business and really learning about the business and how my financial knowledge could contribute to the success of the business owner and what they're trying to achieve in their business. And so I am fortunate that my brain already was kind of working that way. Now, that said, I have talked to many accounting professionals who don't come from that experience, and I do have some thinking around how to kind of reshape that, and really to start to think about not just where the industry is going, not just where technology is going, but ultimately how to strengthen and deepen relationships with clients where you become irreplaceable, where you're not just like an expense line item to them, and what I almost call the necessary part of accounting, which is compliance or tax work, that now you are partnering with them and contributing to their business in a way where you potentially are helping them earn more money. And it is a proactive approach in that
you're speaking my language, Twyla. You're speaking my language. Everyone listening's like, Michelle's talked about this a million times. But I think it's important to hear from an industry expert like you on how do you reshape that thinking? How do you strengthen and deepen those relationships? And I love how you said become irreplaceable, because that's really ultimately how you do it, and how they don't see you as an expense, but they actually see you. Yeah, you're on the expense line, but you're actually a massive investment. You're contributing to the bottom line. You're contributing to revenue ideas. You're contributing to less cost of goods. There's so many facets that come with that. So what would be your first, if we had to break it down, I like the rule of 3, okay? So let's talk about like the first thing that you would recommend for someone listening today to put into action, because everyone here likes actionable steps and something simple, right? Simple. Okay, I got that. I'm going to write that down. I'm going to go tackle it. I'm going to work on that to really reshape the thinking of coming from the more proactive approach than being reactive. And then maybe the third thing we can talk about, which I know, you're a total introvert, and so is everyone else here. I've only met a handful. I could count on one hand, maybe up to 5 extroverted accountants. But I know a lot of you are introverts. But how does that actually make you thrive and grow and become confident in speaking to your clients in order to deepen the relationship, in order to have the end result, which is become irreplaceable? So let's do that one as like the third thing. So what would you say would be the first? And you have a personal story you could attach to it. That's always wonderful. We love to hear stories here at the Abundant Accountant podcast.
Excellent. So first thing, honestly, is trying to reshape your client's thinking, because I would be willing to bet that your audience is thinking, I've heard this before. I know I need to reshape my thinking. I know I need to work up the value chain. I know that technology is right on my heels with taking away components of my job or changing components of my job. Most people in this industry, they know that. We don't need to tell them that already. But where there is a gap, and where this gap needs to be filled by the accounting professional, is that our clients or the business owners don't necessarily know how fast this industry has evolved, know how quickly it's reshaping, and know what a more progressive, non-traditional client accountant relationship can look like. And so even if they actually did think that they knew what that looked like, they might also think that's so far out of reach that I'm not there yet. Because maybe they've had experience with like a CFO or controller, if they understand even those job titles, that they're like, I got to make X number of dollars before I'm even able to consider that type of professional on my team.
Right.
So I think the first step is starting to have conversations with your client that are more forward-looking. And sometimes that's even simple things like, all right, so here's your tax return for the year, or here's your financial reports for the year or the quarter or whatever that frequency of engagement is. But let me ask you this. What's next for you? What are your goals for 2021? What have you planned out for this year? How are you wanting to maybe reestablish yourself, rehire employees, whatever kind of went down in 2020? What does 2021 look like? And I've heard prospective leads say that was a selling feature for them and kind of the hook for them when they talk to an accounting professional is that they heard that accounting professional say something about the future, and it was almost not only are you thinking about the future, you actually care about my business enough to know, what are my goals? Where am I headed? What does this mean? And then as a professional, how can the professional contribute to what it is that the business owner's up to or trying to achieve in that year?
A selling feature is talking about the future, right? So if you can think of that, and I see this also, Twyla, in for those of you listening, a few of you I've worked with, I work with a very select handful of accountants, and this is a big thing we normally just kind of brush over. We're so inundated just getting the old work done that we forget to even ask about the future. So I love some questions that you could start incorporating in your conversations immediately are those forward-looking questions, right? Here's what your tax returns and financials were. What's next for you? And not what's next. I've seen some people ask, like, what do you want to achieve in the next 3 years? That's too far away. How about in the next 12 months, in the next 6 months? We're already a quarter into 2021. What's your goal by, October 31st, 2021? Like, let's get 6-month, 5-month goals, because people who also will hire you will appreciate that you're thinking about near-term goals, because a lot can change in the next 6 to 12 months. And it's a great thing to talk about the future, but the future can also be short-term future, especially for those clients that want to take action now on something, especially if you can find something with all the PPP, EIDL, stimulus, unemployment. I mean, the last history, 18 months, is kind of a mess. So how can you set them up to win right now? So yeah, thank you, Twyla. What's the second thing that you would say?
So the next thing I would say is, of course, now after you've kind of started to talk to your client about these conversations and get them thinking forward, then it's the rethinking of your own practice and what it is that you're providing to your client. And I realize that might sound, well, I should have done that first and this second, but till you got your clients kind of got their interest, you got them hooked, or you got them curious about why you're asking these additional questions, then that's when you want to invest the next piece of time or resources, which I believe is kind of thinking of your services inside of your firm as a house. And if you still think of, because sometimes I talk to accountants who say, what do you mean tax returns and compliance is not what the future holds? And sometimes that's even hard to accept, because I've spent so much time of my education, my career, built up my book of business all around that. So know that if you think of it like a house, tax returns and compliance work is not going away. And truly, to the extent of tax returns and compliance, we're still a ways away from that being automated properly. There's one thing to have things automated. There's another thing to actually have things done properly.
Yeah, I watched this documentary. Have you seen the one on Theranos with Elizabeth Holmes? Have you seen that documentary? Well, talk about having things being done right. The tax return, it's almost like the COVID test. Like, how many false positives are there? We don't want false positives on tax returns, right? Like, I don't think the governments can really handle that. And I don't think they're going to make the mistakes with money. But yeah, just a side note, that documentary was incredible. And you can see how it's basically her vision was to only get a finger prick of blood and get you 200 different test results to be preventative on your health. To be in compliance and to do it right was their biggest challenge. Didn't work out. She's actually, as we speak right now, in trial. So if you're bored, you could probably turn on the TV and watch it. But okay, anyway, back to the house, right? So the tax returns, they're not going away. Compliance isn't going away.
Yeah, think of compliance and your tax returns still as the foundation of the house. So it still needs to be there. It's extremely important in having a secure, solid house. But you can't build a foundation and a slab of concrete and say, there you go, there's your house. There's so much more to it. So next would be what you build off of that foundation, which that would be some of the things like back end things, our team that's going to actually create the deliverables, or it could be workflows or technology or other pieces that you need, marketing, things like that you still need inside of your firm to create a client experience. So if you consider that to be like the walls, and the walls for each client can look different. I mean, some walls might be built of wood or others made of steel, vinyl siding or stucco. There's so many ways to have these walls looking, but they're still straight up and down. They still have a purpose, and they're needed in order to build a house.
Yeah, and a wall could be like, if it's workflows, what color begins with W? Can't think of one. Tech could be teal, right? Like your teal wall in your room could be the
or your
tech
white
wall. Or white. There we go. Glad you're here, Twyla. Right? White wall could be your workflows. Your marketing wall could be what color starts with M?
Mauve.
Mauve. In America, it's called mauve. Oh. In Canada, it's mauve. And then we got another T for team. So we'll go with turquoise. Teal and turquoise. So you've got your 4 walls that make up this room. And I love the house analogy. And I'm not going to get too much into it because I've talked about it before, but the sales process in your business is the foundation to your firm. And so is this, because this is your client experience. So I love it. It's perfect. Okay, what's the next tier to our house? We got the foundation. That's the gray part, right? That's your tax returns and compliance work. It's not going anywhere. But we have our walls, which probably are going to hold up something, if I can guess correctly. So we have our walls to the rooms. We've got a few different colors that we could use for the walls, right? Workflow could be white. Tech could be turquoise. Team could be teal. And then we said for marketing, it could be mauve. So those would be the walls. And then I think that there's something that is these walls are holding up. And I'm going to guess that that's the next part of the house, which is the client experience and really rethinking their practice and thinking about what are the areas that we need to focus on. So what would be that third one?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, a house is not a house based off what we just built without a roof. Nobody's going to be happy having a house with no roof. And the roof is really, when you're inside of the house, that's what you're typically most thankful for is a roof over your head and what shelters you from bad weather and keeps you cool in the summer or warm in the winter. And really that is the valuable part of the house, just like it can be the valuable part of your client relationship. So that's your client services or your advisory, if you will. And this is where things like business strategy planning or budgeting and forecasting or cash flow forecasting or HR or people advisory all fit into that roof.
Yeah. Or the people that love tax. It could be tax planning, tax resolution, tax consulting, like all of your high value, most important things. Because like you said, Twyla, it's the roof over your head. This is the bread and butter of your business. And I also think one other thing for those of you that read the book, the 80-20 principle, this is where 80% of your revenue is going to come from those 20% of your top tier clients.
I think just to layer onto that is that not only is it 80% of your revenue, it also is kind of, when you think about just in a single client relationship, 80% of the value, 80% of the relationship, because that 20% being compliance and just actually filing your tax returns, that means next to nothing to the client, which is unfortunate to hear sometimes.
Right? It's true, though. It's so true.
They just need it done. They just want to make sure the government or the IRS or the CRA, wherever you're located, is off your back.
Yeah.
And not going to be calling you.
Yeah, and right? You don't have a bunch of mail from them. Regular people like me, you get mail or people, in the United States, like bank accounts levied, and you're like, what the heck is going on?
Right. So getting the tax return filed and how much do I owe this year, making sure I pay it as a business owner, that's just, that holds that 20% of the value. That 80% of the value is the part that really where the relationship is the deepest and the strongest and the most impactful in the eyes of the business owner. And so that's where your efforts can be spent. And you're absolutely right. It can be tax advisory, tax planning. It's just beyond like getting all the information and clicking file on the tax return that is in that roof of that house. And that can look very different for every accounting professional.
Mm-hmm.
It can look very different for every client inside of your business, because the reality is that what matters to one of your clients won't matter to another. I mean, if a client's losing money, tax planning is not hot on their agenda.
No, definitely
versus
not.
if they're making a lot of money, maybe they were one of the businesses that pivoted and did really well in 2020. Now they're being faced with, okay, I'm going to be paying tax this year. How do I plan for this for the next year so that I'm not burdened with a big bill? Or is there something else I could be doing to minimize the tax that I pay or that I owe to the IRS?
Yeah.
And so different clients have different needs. The roof of a house can be peaked, it can be flat, it can be curved, it can have shingles, it can have clay roof. There's so many things that can go into that advisory, but that's the evolution of the industry, because the tech and the workflows and the team and the marketing has all enabled us to be able to spend more time on that roof in that value-added service area.
Yeah, and I'm going to add one other little icing on the cake. But every roof needs a chimney, and I think your chimney should be your premium, most top dollar service that you could possibly think of. So when you're rethinking your own practice, which is item number 2 on your to-do list, what could you put on your chimney? What is only available to your top 1% of clients? So if you have 100 clients, what is one person going to get that all the other 100 or 99 won't even receive your time for? And I think that, and having your chimney line item, that's really the proactive type work. Like you said, there's probably a bunch of businesses that were able to pivot, and now they have different kinds of problems they never experienced before. Yeah. So, all right, Twyla. Well, what is the third thing? I'm glad you love it, because I was like, I love your house analogy, and I just thought of the chimney. And I'm like, well, if you have a roof on your head and you live where you live, I'm in San Diego. I don't really need a chimney, but I have one. I have a fake fireplace with a little switch on it. So it's like turning on a light switch and I get heat coming out of it. It's more of a visual thing. But there's people like you who need a real chimney and they have a real fireplace because that's what keeps you warm. If you think about it in the analogy we're giving today, which I think is a beautiful one and something that you can really think about, if you basically need to take your house apart in 4. You got your foundation, you've got 4 walls, that's going to be your mid-level stuff, and then you've got your roof, and then you've got that one premium thing that you could focus on that could really turn into the huge pieces of your revenue just from one client. Now, I'm not saying put all your eggs in one basket with one client, but what is that premium service that only your ideal person can have their hands on? Okay, Twyla, let's go into the third thing, because earlier we were talking, everyone here is introverted. I'm an opposite. I'm not. The whole 2020 was a rough year for me because I didn't get to see my friends and clients, and I didn't get to see all of you at all the events. And for me, that energizes me. Being at home all the time is like a drainer on my batteries. I need to be put in a lot of different chargers to recharge in 2021. But what would you say the third most important thing is? We have reshaping your clients' thinking and then reshaping and rethinking our own practice. What would be the third?
The third would be speaking to that introverted personality. And there might be some people who are out there thinking, I am an introvert. And based off of all of these changes in the industry and what you're suggesting with talking more to your clients and building these deeper relationships and being proactive and having these conversations, sometimes I hear people saying, that's not what I signed up for. I took the career quiz and it came back that I'm an introvert, and accountant was one of the types of professions that I should be or that I should pursue as an introvert.
That's so funny. I hear that all the time. Michelle, I didn't sign up to be a 24/7 salesperson. You're telling me I need to learn sales? Oh, this is great, Twyla. Okay, go ahead. Keep going.
And I completely get it. I am an introvert. 2020 was a hard year, even for introverts. And so I can appreciate what you went through, Michelle, and kind of how tough that was. But I'm pretty comfortable sitting behind my desk too. And I used to even remember the days where I was so excited that I could just be like, I'm going to be heads down all day today. I'm going to get so much done. And the next day I'm going to rinse and repeat and do it again. And that's not really what this profession looks like, especially now. And our Uncle Joe, the accountant that we all remember, that was his career, but it's not ours now. And so how do you get out of this mindset of, firstly, shoot, this isn't what I signed up for. You're asking me to talk to people. And then getting to a comfortable place where it's not draining, it's actually fulfilling and really can be a comfortable place to be and actually an exciting place to be as an accounting professional that is an introvert.
Yeah.
And there's
so
a few
what
things,
did you do? Yeah. Let's hear those things.
There's a few things that I did. And I'll start with saying this, that the sooner you recognize that being a accountant that's going to kind of provide these types of services doesn't necessarily mean you have to stop being an introvert, the better off you're going to be. Because it doesn't mean you have to turn into an extrovert. We're not asking you to change your makeup and who you are. Think of it as now you need to be human. And I love using the word human because everyone can usually relate saying, yeah, of course I'm human. It's like, well, let your clients see that you're human instead of your clients just thinking of you of this persona of this polished professional person that talks numbers and jargon that they don't always understand. Kind of break down those walls a little bit and let them see that you're human, and start with asking questions, because sometimes there's just a confidence gap, even though accountants were so smart. And I just put a feather in my own cap there, but
you are. You guys are the most intelligent group of people I've ever worked with. That's why I love this. I mean, my contribution piece is this podcast, and it's not my main revenue generator, but grateful for all of our sponsors to help keep this going and be here for all of you. But you have to you have to ask those questions and let people see your humanity, like you're saying. And you are all geniuses. I mean, there's so many of you with CPAs. I mean, Twyla, how long did it take you to get a CPA, right? How much time did you invest? What about those listening who have MBAs and master's degrees? That's another couple years to your study. How about all the CPEs and CE credits you have to get every single year? Oh, and for those of you that do tax, what about all the research you have to do and all the laws that change on a literally seems like every couple months basis these days? You are the smartest bunch of people. And I love it. That's why I do this. And I think you should put feathers in your hats, because that's how you remind yourself also what you're worth, which we're not talking about today. Maybe we could have another discussion on that. But asking the questions to your clients to see, to have them see your humanity. So what are some good ones that you've come up with that we could give to our listeners so they can write these down? I know you have a yellow notepad in front of you, so just jot these down. And you can practice just asking all your clients that are calling you right now.
Yeah, no kidding. And truly, last year, being 2020, being COVID, these questions came up and these conversations came up in almost a forced way because of all that kind of went into the stress of having to ask these have these conversations with clients. But really, some of those questions can just be, again, going back to that forward thinking. What are your goals for the next short period of time, like you said, and even you can go so short as 90 days, because
I like 90 days.
Yeah. So what are you looking at over the next 90 days? My favorite question is, what are the top 3 things that keep you up at night? Because
that's my favorite questions. Did you steal that from me? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, it is. Yeah, I don't ask top 3. I just say, like, what's that one thing that keeps you up at night? Like, what is just itching at you at night? I was talking to my boyfriend last night, and he's like, it's like you have a boxing match in your head going on. He's like, no, it's like I have a royal kingdom who can't get on the same page. He's got so many voices in his head. But like, what is that one thing that you get asked about in your head every single day that keeps you up at night?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Or what's the thing that just as a business owner is stressing you the most? The reason I like to say 3 things is because if your client comes back to you and says, well, you know what I'm struggling with right now? I don't know if I should choose this vendor or that vendor for my products. Then the accountant's going to say, shoot, like I don't have any contribution there. So usually if you can get 3 things out of their client, there'll be at least one thing that has a dollar sign attached to it.
I like that.
And it lets you have something to build the conversation off of. And typically the thing that is stressing them the most is the thing that they're going to pay to have a solution on that, or
and they're going to pay you the most. That might be your chimney. That might be the chimney in the house.
Absolutely. Which is why every chimney could be different, because what keeps one business owner up won't be what keeps another business owner up.
I love it.
And then the other thing to think about inside of that introverted kind of personality, actually, I've got 2 other things. The next one is be really mindful of your time. I mean, to spend 8 hours a day in conversations like this, when you're an introvert, you will be exhausted and probably not be able to do the foundational work and the walls of the work inside of our house, because you're just exhausted, or you're stressed, or you're no longer running with the energy that you should be running at in order to do that high level thinking that's still required inside of your role as their accountant. So really managing your day and trying to be like selfish with your time and time budgeting and those sorts of things become extremely important when you're an introvert. And these things can be a bit thrilling, but also draining. And when I say a bit thrilling, it's like when you do something uncomfortable, you're bound to have this little bit of, serotonin or some sort of endorphins that go off. But when you can leave that client conversation having some level of fulfillment, then you'll get those hits of dopamine or whatever kind of hormones go off for you inside of that conversation. But if you do that all day long and you're an introvert at heart,
you'll be
burn
toast.
Out.
You'd be like a piece of bread in the toaster and it comes out black because they put it in there too long. That happened to me the other day. I was making a tuna salad sandwich and I put the butt of the bread in there and it came out like a biscuit. It was like a burnt biscuit. So if you spend 8 hours talking to people and clients and sales meetings, you will be like a burnt biscuit. Yeah. What was the other thing you wanted to add? I know you said you had 2 left.
When you start to have these kinds of conversations with clients where you don't necessarily know where the dialogue's going to head, versus when you've done their tax return, you're like, all right, it's time to talk about, here was your numbers last year. Here's how much you made, and here's how much you owe to the government. And I've filed your return, and make sure you pay by this time. That's very scripted. You know that like the back of your hand. Versus conversations where you're asking questions, you're opening up dialogue. You don't know where it's going to go. The reality is there's going to be inside of those conversations some parts of the conversations that are difficult to have. A great example of this is around cash flow, where you start to dive in deeper to your client's cash flow and you're like, oh, shoot, you don't have enough money for rent at the end of the month. And that's an extremely difficult conversation to have with somebody. And as an introvert, I was like, gosh, I barely am able to push myself to have good conversations with people.
How do I talk about their problems with them?
Right.
Yeah.
How do I talk about these difficult conversations? And my tip, because it gets me through those difficult conversations with clients where I'm like, oh, I'm struggling to call them, I'm struggling to talk to them about this, is I think about, what if I don't tell them? And that's what pushes me through every time. What if I don't tell them that I just realized that now they're not going to have enough money for rent? What if I don't tell them that? What does that do to their business? And that helps me push through so many different conversations if I just go into the headspace of what if I don't?
Yeah, no. And I think that's massive, because here's what I tell all of the accountants. And Twyla, I know this is our first time on the podcast. Definitely need to have you back again, by the way, for some other topic. So we'll talk about that offline. But I'm like, if you don't tell them this, you're doing them a disservice. I've had a business that's gone under. I've had that thing where we couldn't make rent and we couldn't make payroll. So I've been there. I've been that person. I did not have an account that told me, we did not have a cash flow budgeting conversation. I mean, our expenses were just too high and there was a whole slew of things. But what if you don't tell them? What is their alternative? And you're actually setting them up to fail if you keep your mouth shut. It's almost like going to the dentist and the dentist telling you, you know what, you don't have a cavity because I know that they don't have any money to pay for that cavity. So I'm just going to not tell them what I see on the x-ray, right? Like you looking at their cash flows like a doctor looking at x-rays. Why would you not tell them that they can't make rent next month and basically they have a tumor and they're about to die?
Yeah. Yeah. That's where my head was going, is that it actually, I've used and heard the analogy too of it being a cancer patient. And this is where you can sometimes go to thinking about when you think, gosh, technology is hot on my heels. Am I actually going to be out of a job? And if you think about that, you can think of maybe they're going to get really smart with diagnosing or picking up on these things. And that technology inside of medicine and healthcare exists. But do you want a piece of software telling you that you have cancer? And if you think about that in the accounting profession, it's like, use the technology to make your work easier, make it more efficient, make it more, have more depth and more intelligent, but then be the human that you are to have the conversations with your client. Because the technology will never do that. It'll never do it in a way that is really valuable to the client, which is talking natural language. This is where sometimes we have to lower our smarts down a little bit.
Yeah. You got to talk third grade to us. We don't need to know what 910 Form B is. We don't need to know about anything like that. We got to use simple terminology for people like me, because I am your ideal client and I am not a CPA and accountant. So actually, when you think about going to the doctor, they don't tell you which pulmonary artery they're going to cut, pull, or whatever to get through into this part. You know, they don't talk to you in scientific terms. And we can't talk to our clients in techie terms. That's what I always call it, techie terms.
It's true. That's when you actually become intimidating, and any sort of human relationship that you've built just got destroyed, because they started to kind of get into that spot of, this person is human. And I trust them and I can talk to them and not feel nervous to tell them that I haven't done something right, or I'm not performing the way I wanted to inside of my business. As soon as you talk jargon, they're like, oh, wait, no, I don't feel comfortable talking to this person anymore. You actually become intimidating, even though you're an introverted accountant and you would not think of yourself as intimidating whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it's so true. Well, Twyla, thank you so much for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. This was awesome. Like, really how to reshape your thinking. You have so many things. I hope you took notes today for all of you listening. Strengthen and deepen those relationships, because that's where the meat is of your house, on top of that roof, and really become irreplaceable. I think that's like, if I had to wrap it up in one bow with a little holidays are past us, but here's another holiday present for you. Wrap it up in a bow and think about every single move you make in your business with your clients. How do I make myself irreplaceable? Twyla, before we go, for those that want to sample FreshBooks, check it out, because I know we didn't even talk about any of that today. Can you give a quick plug?
Sure. Yeah. So we have a accounting professionals program here at FreshBooks, where we are supporting accounting professionals using FreshBooks in collaboration with their clients. And if anyone's curious to check it out, they can go to freshbooks.com/accountants.
Perfect. Thank you so much for being here with us. It was an honor to have you.
It was so much fun. Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you all so much for joining Twyla and I today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. What an awesome episode. She's really good at this, I must say. And we're going to have another conversation coming up in the latter part of this year. We're going to talk, I'm not sure on the topic yet, but just keep your eyes tuned. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. And also, if you haven't yet, I would be grateful if you would leave a written review. Written review on Apple Podcasts actually help it spread like an octopus. I actually just watched this documentary on an octopus. It is phenomenal. The filmography, I think that's the word for it, was beautiful. And the story about the octopus, and every day this guy was going out to meet the octopus. So think about the review that you leave for me like an octopus. It's like the little tentacles going out and spreading and helping this message and these episodes help other colleagues of yours who might be struggling. So would be grateful if you could leave that written review. And again, thank you all so much for joining us here on the Abundant Accountant podcast and really talking about a conversation about rethinking, reshaping your thinking about the future. Not that technology is on your heels, but how do you keep that as the foundation of your house? But how do you work on your chimney? Let's work on those walls in your house and let's work on the chimney. So your homework right now is to write out your walls and put on there what services you provide for all the walls in your house, and then what is going to be that service that you provide as your chimney. And let the technology take over the work you don't even want to do. So again, thank you so much for being here with us today on the Abundant Accountant podcast. Again, my ask is that you hit the subscribe button, maybe share it with a colleague. You could actually hit share on Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts, and let's help spread the word in 2021 and have more people really be able to grow their businesses, which in turn is helping more business owners thrive in the world that we're in today. So thanks so much for being here and have a great day, and I'll see you in the next episode.